Once every year in the middle of the monsoon, something happens in the East Indian state of Assam that has no equivalent anywhere else in the world. A temple, one of the most powerful Shakti Peethas in all of India, closes its doors. Not for a renovation, not for a holiday. It closes because, according to centuries of unbroken belief, the goddess inside is bleeding. For 3 days, no one is allowed to see her. No priest performs pujas, no bell rings. The farmers in the fields put their tools down. No plowing, no sowing. The earth itself, they say, is resting. And on the 4th day, when the doors finally open again, thousands of people, many of whom have walked for days to get here, line up for a piece of cloth. A cloth soaked in deep red. And they will carry it home like a treasure. This is the story of Ambubachi. This is the story of Maa Kamakhya. Namaskaram. I'm K. Kumar and this is Chaturya, the 4th state. This episode is divided into simple chapters, so if you want to skip straight to a particular part of the story, then the timestamps are right there on your screen. But do that after you subscribe to this channel. It encourages me to make more meaningful content for you. And if this whole idea that the earth itself is having a menstrual cycle sounds familiar, it's because I covered a similar tradition a few weeks ago of Raja Parva, celebrated in Odisha. I'll link that video in the description and the card should be appearing right now on the screen. If you want to watch it after this, then please do so. But Kamakhya's story goes much deeper and much further back, so let's get into it. Let's start with the place itself, because the geography here is not incidental, it's part of the mystery. Kamakhya Temple sits on Neelachal Hill, overlooking the city of Guwahati in Assam. The name Neelachal means blue mountain, but there's something most people don't know. Across Tantric texts and oral tradition, this hill is repeatedly described as having a faint reddish, almost vermilion tinge to its soil and rock. And in Tantric symbolism, that red is not random. It's connected to Rajas, the cosmic principle of energy, passion, and creation itself. So even before you understand the legend, the land is already telling you what kind of place this is. Now here's a detail that surprises most first-time visitors when you walk into the inner sanctum of Kamakhya. Expecting to see a grand idol like you would at most Devi temples, but you won't find one here. There is no statue, no carved face, no murti, no eyes painted in gold. Instead, you descend into a dark cave-like chamber called the Garbhagriha, literally the womb chamber, and inside there's a natural stone formation shaped like a yoni, kept perpetually moist by an underground spring that has never run dry in recorded history. The goddess is not represented here, she is present here. To understand why this particular spot on earth became this powerful, we have to go back to one of the most tragic stories in the Puranas, the story of Sati and the Yajna of Daksha. Daksha was Devi Sati's father. Sati had married Mahadeva Shiva against Daksha's wishes. So Daksha harbored a deep-seated contempt for Mahadeva Shiva. The king deliberately excluded Shiva and Sati from the grand Yajna. And driven by a desire to resolve the family conflict, Devi Sati attended the Yajna despite Shiva's explicit warnings. Upon her arrival, Daksha launched into a humiliating public denunciation of her husband. But unable to tolerate the desecration of Shiva's divine status, Sati withdrew her life force, immolating herself in the sacrificial fire of the Yajna through her internal spiritual power. When word reached Shiva, what followed was one of the most devastating scenes in all of Hindu Puranas. He arrived, lifted Sati's lifeless body on his shoulders, and began to dance. The Rudra Tandava, the dance of cosmic destruction and grief. This wasn't sorrow as we understand it. This was sorrow with the power to unravel creation itself. As Shiva moved across the universe carrying Sati, the 3 worlds trembled. The Devas grew afraid that if this dance didn't stop, existence itself would collapse. So Bhagavan Vishnu intervened, and using his Sudarshana Chakra, he began cutting away pieces of Sati's body one by one to release Shiva from his grief. And wherever a piece of her fell, there on that very ground, a Shakti Peetha was born, a place where divine feminine energy became permanently rooted in the earth. And at Kamakhya, this is the part that explains everything we have talked about so far. It is believed that Sati's yoni, her womb, fell here. That's why there is no idol, there is no murti. The place isn't a monument built to represent her, it's a wound in the universe that became sacred. So now let's talk about the festival. What actually happens during Ambubachi during these 4 days? Ambubachi comes from the Sanskrit word Ambubachi, meaning the issuing forth of water. It falls during the Assamese month of Ahar, or in mid-June, exactly as the monsoon arrives and the sun moves into Mithuna Rashi. This timing is deliberate and deeply symbolic. The monsoon is when the earth, after months of dry heat, suddenly becomes fertile again. Rivers swell, soil that was cracked and barren turns soft and ready for planting. In a very real physical sense, the earth comes alive. The belief is that goddess Kamakhya undergoes her own version of this, an annual cycle of menstruation, mirroring the fertility cycle of the earth itself. For the first 3 days, the temple is completely sealed. No priest enters the Garbhagriha. No puja is conducted, and according to tradition, the goddess is resting, going through a private process that no one, not even her most devoted priests, is permitted to witness. And during these 3 days, an extraordinary thing happens across the region. Agricultural work completely stops. No plowing the fields, no digging, no sowing of seeds. The land, like the goddess, is left undisturbed. This isn't just a temple ritual, it is a regional acknowledgement that the earth, Bhumi Devi, in this moment deserves the same rest and privacy that any person would want during menstruation. It's one of the only living traditions in the world that doesn't just tolerate the idea of menstruation, it actively reveres it as the engine of creation. And then on the 4th day, the doors of the temple reopen. And what follows is one of the most unique darshans anywhere in Hindu worship. Devotees receive 2 things. The first is Angodak, water that has touched the goddess's sanctum, believed to carry her blessing. The second and the most sought after is the Rakta Bastra. Literally, it means cloth of blood. It is a piece of red cloth said to have absorbed the goddess's menstrual fluid during her 3 days of seclusion. There is something about Kamakhya that separates it from almost every other major temples in India. It is its deep foundational relationship with Tantra. Kamakhya isn't just a Shakti Peetha. It's considered the birthplace of the entire stream of Tantric practice. This is not mainstream temple worship with aartis and prasad. This is the esoteric, intense, often misunderstood world of Tantric sadhana. During Ambubachi, specifically, something unusual happens. Sadhus, aghoris, and tantrics who are otherwise reclusive, who spend most of their year in isolation away from public view, emerge and gather at Kamakhya. For these days, the temple grounds become one of the only places in India where you can witness the hidden world of tantric practice out in the open. And interestingly, if you have ever wondered whether this kind of raw, untamed Shakti worship exists anywhere outside Assam, the answer is yes, it does, and it's much closer to my home. And for those of you who know, I am from Kerala. And in Kerala, there's a place called Kodungallur, which has a very famous Bhagavati temple. And the Bharani festival at this Bhagavati temple brings out a strikingly similar atmosphere. Hundreds of Velichapadas, oracles dressed entirely in red, in deep trance, wielding swords and sickles, gather and run around the temple in a frenzied procession called Kavutindal. Of course, the deity, the legend, and the specific ritual are completely different. I'm not saying they're the same. The temple at Kodungallur honors Bhadrakali's fierce victory over the demon Dharika, but the underlying current is the same. A temple where the goddess's energy is considered too powerful, too raw for ordinary daily worship, and where tantric intensity is allowed to surface openly for just a few days in a year. This is also why Kamakhya carries a certain reputation, sometimes feared, sometimes misunderstood, among people unfamiliar with tantric tradition. It's one of India's oldest and most rigorous spiritual systems, treating the body, divine or human, not as something to be ashamed of, but as a vehicle for transformation. Before we close, there's one more small story connected to this hill that most visitors may not hear. Near the temple, there's a staircase and it's incomplete. Just stops mid-construction, frozen in stone for centuries. The legend says that an asura called Naraka felt deeply obsessed with the goddess and demanded her hand in marriage. To refuse him outright would have invited his wrath on the people living near the hill. So instead, the goddess set him an impossible condition. Build a staircase from the very bottom of the hill all the way to the temple in a single night, and then I'll marry you. Naraka, who was desperate, worked through the night with inhuman speed. And as dawn approached, it became clear he might actually succeed. So the goddess intervened, ensuring that a rooster crowed before sunrise, tricking Naraka into believing that morning had arrived. He abandoned the work, believing that he had failed. The staircase remains unfinished to this day, a physical scar on the hill, a reminder that even an Asura's devotion couldn't outpace the Devi's will. When I started researching Kamakhya for one of the chapters in my next book, which is going to come out during Diwali this year, I realized this temple isn't just one footnote among many. It's a place where Puranic legend, where even tribal worship and Tantric philosophy all collide into something genuinely unlike anywhere else in the world. And if this kind of deep dive into a folklore and Puranas is something you want more of, then please subscribe to my channel, because I cover stories like this from across Indian Puranas and regional folklore every week. May Devi Kamakhya be with you.